Kia ora koutou katoa, hello and welcome to the breakdown. Yes, we are back in lockdown and with no rugby across the country. If you thought we would have nothing to talk about, you don't know us. As South Africa move atop of the Rugby Championship on the weekend, we ponder the immediate future for the All Blacks. So John Kerwin, Mills Muliaina, we'll get to Bernie in a moment. Team, we're back at home, we're locked down. How are we coping once again? Mills, for you, more family time, quality time with the kids.
Oh, quality time. I tell you what, I don't know if it's quality time at the moment, Goldie, but yeah, we're back in it. You've had to adjust homeschooling. I had my first COVID test last week. I needed to go in there. And can I say, although I waited 5.5 hours, our essential workers, gee, they are doing a fantastic job. You know, when we finally pulled in there, they're very happy, very energetic, and I was glad to get out there with a negative test. So well done, you guys. Keep it up, and yeah, we're at it again.
JK?
Yeah, no, I struggled a bit first couple of days. Team, to be fair, I just wasn't ready for it. Don't know why. Probably my mistake. So I really struggled with some anxiety early, but I have a pretty solid plan that I put in place, and things are a little bit different for me. So my family's away. So I have my brother, my son, future son-in-law here with me, who goes to work. He's an essential worker. I, like you, Mills, had a test, a COVID test, and we waited 2 hours. But like you said, the frontline workers were awesome, full of energy, considering they'd been there all day. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, and I've started to adjust much better, Goldie. I'm settling into this COVID world we live in. So pretty good at the moment.
And I must say as well, I didn't get a test. I went and got a jab. Rung with GP. I said, "What's happening? Have you got a space?" And luckily enough, he had a cancellation. There was an opportunity, and away I went and got it. And you're right, JK. It's just a little bit touchy a couple of days later on. Well, normally when we go to Bern, we talk about what's happening around the world, but all of the action over the last few days, Bern, has been what's been happening across the Tasman.
Hey Jeff, or maybe what's not happening across the Tasman. SANZAAR is scrambling to save the Rugby Championship. There's been finger pointing, curse words, and neither side really giving an inch. Let's have a quick recap. So Rugby Australia boss Andy Marinos, he's crying foul, saying he only found out that the All Blacks weren't coming to Perth via the media. Now, in a statement, he says, "It's incredibly disappointing to be informed of this decision via the media, despite having a conversation with the CEO moments before, and there was no mention that this was the intention." Now, NZR CEO Mark Robinson disagrees. He says that's simply not true. He told News Talk ZB,
"We had calls right through from sort of Wednesday, Thursday. We put something in writing on Thursday, and then we spoke to them before anything was released."
It's the classic he said, she said, though no one said anything to Dave Rennie. The Wallaby coach, quote, bloody angry.
Yeah, look, I think it's disappointing how it's been communicated. Our boys all found out through social media. I thought New Zealand Rugby didn't even have the respect to consult RA about their decision, and so that's hugely disappointing.
So clearly, there's been a comms issue, and it's not distance that keeps people, teams, businesses and organisations apart. It's communication. Well, one South African journo's been pretty clear in his comms. We've heard from him before, Mark Keohane. He's called for the All Blacks to either be ditched from the competition altogether or to forfeit points. He must remember, though, that South Africa, his own team, withdrew from the TRC last year, citing player welfare issues. Meanwhile, those who actually make the decisions, good luck with that one, SANZAAR, they've got no shortage of takers to host the Rugby Championship. South Africa's jumping up and down with the old pick me banner. The national coach and also the CEO of South Africa Rugby is saying they would love to host the tournament. They're well versed in turning on rugby tests within the prevailing COVID restrictions and have the venues and accommodation necessary. We just need the go ahead. The Lions beating the Pumas 29-10 on Sunday, by the way. Even Wembley has been touted as a possible venue. According to the UK Telegraph, the RFU has said it's always open to discussion regarding the global calendar. And what about the States? The All Blacks are due to play a test there on October the 23rd. The stadium in Washington, D.C. can host 80,000 people. They're hoping, though, for between 30 and 40,000 ticket sales. They'll be happy with that. And if they do, it will still surpass what we got for the second Bledisloe at Eden Park. Rugby Australia hopes to lock down September the 4th in Queensland as the first fixture there. Marinos demanding in writing from the All Blacks that they'll attend or face a $5 million bill for bailing. Stand down, Australia Rugby. Call off the lawyers. It sounds like the All Blacks intend to be on a plane on Saturday. But for now, it's a wait and watch. Australia and New Zealand, they seem to be stuck in a loveless marriage for now. Paul Cully from the Sydney Morning Herald writes, now that the children have grown up and flown the coop, South Africa to Europe's new rugby competition, Australia and New Zealand are staring at each other in an empty house with the dreadful realisation they don't really understand or possibly like each other. Whenever the All Blacks leave, wherever their destination, the relationship between the trans-Tasman rivals is anything but loved up. In fact, I'd go as far to say we're on a break.
Well, the All Blacks had planned, of course, to be in Perth this week preparing for a test match against the Wallabies. News over the weekend that they wouldn't be travelling across the Tasman. Sam Whitelock, the All Black captain, joins us here on the breakdown tonight. And thanks for joining us, Sam. And first thing I've got to ask you is the fact, as All Black captain and part of the Players Association, as a representative, what role did you possibly play in the discussions with New Zealand Rugby?
Yeah, it's something for myself, the older you get, the more involved you get in some of these politic things. Still pretty keen on being a rugby player, let alone getting involved in this. But for us, we played a small part in it. Obviously, the NZRU took the lead on it. Really good having the RPA board there of current players, but also all these other people that can help inform you of what's going on. One thing I would say around all of it is the information that was coming out was amazing, how quickly things were changing through SANZA, NZRU, the other unions, just how quickly it moved. And I think something that's probably overlooked is how actually fast everyone adapted and adjusted. And I think we're going to get there with the Rugby Championship, and I really want it to get there. So fingers crossed we're on the plane Saturday week.
Plenty of reaction across the Tasman coming out of Australia and around the Wallabies. There has been suggested that you were in dialogue with Michael Hooper, the captain of the Wallabies. Is that the case? And if it was, what were you talking to him about?
Yeah, it's something that Hoops took the lead on. Sent Sam Kane and myself an email. Obviously, he CC'd Matt Tamura in as well, who, all of us are on International Players Association boards and things like that, played against each other heaps. And there's always a bit of that talk back and forth of what's the best thing for the game, and this was just another opportunity for us to connect and go through as player to players to work out what we're potentially looking at, what is good. And first there was a couple of emails, and I was like, "Oh, bugger this! Let's just get out the phone and get on the phone and talk." And it's amazing how at times we probably get caught up, and we're playing Australia, so. You want to build the intensity and stuff, but they're all great guys, and it's good to have that connection with them. And they're hurting at the moment, and that's understandable. They're in camp at the moment. But like I said, hopefully we're on the plane on Saturday, and then we can have a full rugby championship, whether that's in Queensland or somewhere else around the world. Time will tell.
Did you agree with the decision New Zealand Rugby made and the fact that to delay leaving New Zealand to compete in the Rugby Championship?
Yeah, I think it was a smart decision. I think the reason it was a smart decision was because of the uncertainty of not only New Zealand and Australia, but also the two others being Argentina and South Africa, and what that looks like for them to get into Australia. But as I said before, I think it's going to go ahead, and I really hope it does. And I'm very excited to hopefully play my part in playing hopefully attractive rugby for the Rugby Championship, because for us as Kiwis, this is such a massive tournament for us, playing against all the guys down south, and having South Africa back in it this year will be awesome. We haven't had a look at them since playing them round robin at the World Cup.
What do you guys then need to be certain of before you get on a plane, head offshore, knowing the fact you're going to be away for 14 weeks?
Yeah, I think the first thing is making sure we know that the games are actually going to go ahead. But besides that, for me as a rugby player, that's not my job to sort that out. That's CEOs, Sanzo, etc. And I know they're working their guts out at the moment to get those things done. And it can't be that easy with COVID, because COVID keeps throwing things left, right and centre. But I know that they're out there with the players and the tournament at heart. That they know that if there's an opportunity to play it, every player is keen to get out there, and so am I. So can't wait to hopefully get on the plane and get into it.
Look, there's no doubt there's a lot of positives coming out of the All Black performances through the course of the season, but the fact you're facing this adversity, maybe some uncertainty right now for Coach Ian Foster in terms of his future, how does that in some way, does that affect your on-field performance?
Probably a really good question at the end of the year to ask, but I think at the moment, personally, I think it's actually really good for us. It's making us challenge ourselves around how we're performing. Are we distractible from, potentially what's being said in the media or what people were saying? Is it actually taking away from what we're trying to do on the field? Because ultimately, as All Blacks, we're judged on the field. And, if we can go out and play attractive rugby and, play the game we want to play and improve ourselves, whether it's skill sets or mindset or whatever it is, I think this is another cool opportunity to roll with it a little bit and make sure that we're not stuck in our ways. And I think we have to do that with playing different teams and in different competitions. So I think Rugby Championship is very critical, but so is India Tour, playing against some of those Northern Hemisphere teams, different styles, being only a couple of years away from the World Cup.
So, Sam, did you feel as though that last week between those two Bledisloe Cups at Eden Park, this team made some huge steps forward? And we were hearing the fact that there was a discussion where you openly talked about some of this adversity and it helped the performance. Is that entirely true?
Yeah, I think the things we learnt last year before we went away for Rugby Championship in Australia, we probably didn't talk about it enough as a team around what potentially we're getting into, around what the pressures are. So we talked about that a little bit at the start of the week, and then allowed us to concentrate on what we had to through the week. And it's great having so many different leaders through the team that we could address the issues at the start, and then allowed us to actually concentrate on rugby, and felt like we got better from Aussie 1 to Aussie 2. And I think the reason was because people were willing to be open with how they were, how their game was, and everyone wants to get better, and that's something that I've noticed this year compared to other years. Everyone's keen to get better, everyone's challenging each other. So I think that's only a positive, having guys that are competing against each other.
You've been a captain of Super Rugby team. You've done the All Blacks from time to time, but it's your team right now, and these are your responsibilities. How are you enjoying this role? Of course, this game day and playing, but all of a sudden you become the face of the All Blacks when there are plenty to talk about. Is that something you enjoy, or the fact that at the moment you're just having to learn as you go?
You just got to roll with the punches to a point. But the cool thing is, and I'm saying the same words again and again, but it's what I've heard people say, and they're 100% true. Being a leader of any side, it's never just you out there. There's always other people that can lead the areas. There's no point in me talking about back attack or things like that. And the example was in the weekend that I think the message came down from upstairs to have a shot with Damien, and Richie was the guy that got it, so he was really confident, saying, right, let's have a shot, give it to Damien, burn a minute on the clock and get Artie back from the naughty boy chair. So it was really good to, someone like Richie got the message, backed himself, agreed with it, and then for me, I didn't need to actually do anything but say, right, let's have a shot. So it's nice when people are taking the lead, and for myself, then I can just worry about playing well.
And you've been playing well all season. It's been a remarkable season for you. Just lastly, this is lockdown. That's what we're facing here in New Zealand. You don't know your future. What are you doing at home right now these last few days?
Yeah, I was saying to you before off here, quite happy. I've been doing a few weights and stuff, but nothing too major. I think last time in lockdown, I fell out of the tree because I was trying to do chin-ups and must have been a bit heavy for the branch and fell on my back. And my son was looking at me going, "Are you all right, Dad?" Kind of a little bit concerned, but not really. So it's been heaps of time with the kids, but still working really hard because, hopefully we're on that plane on Saturday.
All right, Sam, thanks very much for joining us. Stay safe, train well, and we look forward to seeing the outcome of the next few days and the future for the All Blacks in 2021. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Awesome. Cheers, mate.
Well, JK, it looks as though the players themselves, because of the uncertainty, are of course very supportive of what New Zealand Rugby have decided to do in this case. Look, reality is they don't know where the Rugby Championship is going to be played and when it's going to be played. Do you agree with the decision not to travel to Perth and play this weekend?
Yeah, totally. Look, we're in COVID. The thing that upset me the most was, I don't know where the misinformation was, but what Dave Rennie said actually annoyed me a wee bit because we're in COVID. Players don't know where they're going, what's happening. For me, it's people's safety first. I mean, I want to see everything played because, that I also believe sport's really, really important. Live sport's important to have on Sky so that people can get some enjoyment. But I just think the reaction was wrong. And it sounded to me like, the right communication had been done. There must be a lack of comms down to Dave Rennie or to certain parts of the team. I don't know what you think, Mills, but I don't know whether it's one-upmanship or trying to get a dig in or something, but we just got to forget it. That's not rugby, man. We got to work together.
Yeah, and I guess I probably share the same thoughts, JK. I think now you've had a couple of days to a few days to think about that decision and logistically what it sort of looks like. It all sort of seems like it was just, sort of hot-headed, come out and all guns blazing without really thinking about what it looked like. It'd be interesting that, if this would have been the same thoughts in terms of the All Blacks. But I think given the times and the uncertainty, I think it was time to take a breath, have a look, reassess. And the reality is right now, we don't know if South Africa or Argentina are going to be allowed in. And, what's the use of having a game, a one-off game when the All Blacks go over there and then get over there and then find the championship is off? I mean, what do you go to that? So I think it's having a few days to think about it and listening to what, Sam's mentioned. One thing that really stood out is, the players are having a conversation. Now, I mean, why can't that then translate, to the boardroom? Because it seems like there's two different conversations going on, or they're having a conversation and then all of a sudden someone comes out, like a Dave Rennie in the media, and then a conversation is forgotten about, conveniently, or vice versa. But it saddens me in some way because, in an environment that we're at, we've worked, so hard with the Australians. You think about the history that we have had over the war and things, and at the moment, our communication for things so simple as what it seems like right now is just it's just not evident at all.
Yeah, can I just jump in there because I think we've got a fundamental issue with the leadership of our game. This is a game where we can show way more transparency. The people running the game are always playing the secret squirrel thing. I mean, it's a game. To know. So if they're all involved in an open plan and open transparency, this confusion wouldn't come in, right? This is what I don't understand. Why is this all this secret squirrel stuff? Why don't they just say every day? And then people would know how quickly it changed. Because what I got from Sam was how quickly this has changed and does change over, a few days. So stop being so secretive. Just get it out there. Doesn't matter if you change the decision. We're not going to treat you badly.
Well, there's no doubt, though, the circumstances have changed from when the original conversations and changes were made early on in the season to the Bledisloe Cup. The fact that the Wallabies and Australian rugby had to make sacrifices to change dates, to accept playing back-to-back games in New Zealand at Eden Park, which obviously didn't suit them and didn't probably give them the best opportunity to try and win back the Bledisloe Cup. But also the fact that pushing back a game in Perth, I mean, they've obviously got a sentiment for the fact that New Zealand rugby has in some way let them down. And is that fair, JK, or Mills? And I'll go with you, Mills, on this one. Is that fair given the circumstances we're dealing with?
Oh, look, I totally understand. You know, when you look at it and why the frustration, you know, they've obviously bent over backwards to get here. But let's not forget, you know, where we were before, you know, this all happened. You know, when our borders have you know, now they've closed. You know, even getting out now in terms of the Delta variant, things have changed since they came over. Yes, they got on the plane and got in here before that those new restrictions happened. And this is before all this Delta stuff happened. Remember, this has all got to do with what happened in Sydney and things like that. And it's constantly moving. And I think that's what your point is, JK. This is COVID. You know, so at that particular time, they felt the need to get over here. They obviously spoke about it. They bent over backwards to be here. Not ideal, yes, given the circumstances to try and win that cutback. But this has changed once again. You know, now we're going over there with the uncertainty that this whole competition is not going to happen. You know, South Africa can't come in. Initially, well, they've got, you know, spots, MIQ spots in Sydney. But look at the way the world's changed over there. I mean, these protests at the moment. So how can they get into a red from a red flag, you know, country into another state? And this is another aspect of it, because Australia's, you know, there's different rules for each state, so they've got to consider that. So I'll go back to where I suppose Dave Rennie and Australian rugby are saying, yeah, I can see that they're frustrated, but if you pull all that frustration back and have a look at the details, which I'm sure they have now over the last couple of days, that's probably become more evident now that, hey, it probably was a sensible decision to be able to make. Let's reassess and see they're going. The All Blacks are not saying they don't want to play. They do want to play. Let's give it some time and see, you know, where government stand, where the restrictions stand, and then obviously make a decision around that. But I just think they went out there hot-headed or whatnot, whatever you want to call it, and perhaps they needed to take a step back, have a think about it. This wasn't a case of New Zealand trying to get one over you. It was purely based on what did it look like, you know, down the track.
Yeah,
so, JK, does that mean...
hang on, we've used COVID so that we don't have to go and play the third Bledisloe Cup or the initial championship, right? No, we haven't. And look, the Australians have made incredible sacrifices, and to that I thank them, because, you know, the 2-test series was amazing in our country. Then things changed. I mean, you can't blame the NZR for COVID, and we can't blame Australia if they say you can't come to Perth now because we're closed. That's not their fault. They've got to look after their people. So I just think that as rugby people, I keep coming back to it. I think what Sam said gave me a lot of hope, that the players are picking up the phone and talking to each other. I just hope that Andy Marinos is picking up the phone and keeping Dave Rennie informed, because I can understand his frustration, but you don't take COVID out on New Zealand rugby. That's just, you know, I mean, this is a really, really difficult world for all of us at the moment, and trying to get sports done is an incredibly challenging time when things are changing every day.
And what I'd say for that then is the fact that it'll be very interesting to who speaks and talks next, who has the next comment, and where we go from here, because we need to find a solution for the Rugby Championship going forward, and we have to find it very, very quickly. Look, after the break, we're going to talk about so many things. We're going to talk about eligibility. We're going to talk about a little bit about Super Rugby. Stay with us. Just grateful that Thingy didn't make off the ball. Thank God, lads. Hey, look, I tell you, a lot's changed in recent times, but if you look at what the ARU are considering in terms of their team going forward, they've had this Giteau law, which was bringing back players from overseas that had restrictions, and after some recent results, it looks as though they're going to change tact and maybe allow Dave Rennie to select more players from overseas. South Africa have done this. The fact that they weren't able to compete financially at home, a lot of their players have headed offshore. They've come back, and what have they done? Become the number one team in the world. They've won a World Cup, and they've just beaten the British and Irish Lions. JK, is this the right move for Australian rugby right now?
I don't think you can answer it that simply, Goldie, to be fair. I am really, really concerned about Super Rugby as a sort of byproduct of letting players play overseas. So does that, weaken the Australian sides? You also need to understand what the Ghetto law is. So, for example, we've got players going overseas, and I think we're now breaking into what does that mean for us? I call them financial sabbaticals. So, Whitelock, Retallick, Barrett went on one, and yet TJ Perenara was a little bit different because Patrick Tuipulotu is going on one. So you sign with the NZR, and because we're trying to compete with European money, you go on a financial sabbatical, which gives New Zealand rugby your services for a few more years. I think this Ghetto law is a little bit different, where you play like the South Africans do, completely overseas. And I think that would be horrendous for us as a nation, but also horrible for Super Rugby. I'm really concerned that Super Rugby is going to end up like, like our Bunnings or our club rugby, because people want to see the superstars, man. They want to see Beauden Barrett playing, Patrick Tuipulotu. So that's dangerous, I believe.
Mills, I mean, for you look at guys the likes of Rory Arnold, who's playing overseas. Have they got enough players that would make a significant difference? And is the level of competition where they're playing, does it actually support the play, the way the Wallabies want to play the game of rugby union, and does it help them perform on a consistent basis?
Look, I think they do. I think if you look at it from a Wallabies point of view, I think it's probably where they need to get to. Ideally, possibly not, over the years, but I think their situation now in terms of, getting to the top in terms of, World Rugby and winning a Rugby World Cup, I think, they've obviously had a really good thinking about it, and these guys will make a significant difference. I think what JK is talking about also is about, I suppose, they're already struggling in terms of, some of the depth that's there. Now, if all that depth's going overseas, to Europe and chasing a lot bigger money, which, understandably there is, then they're going to lose that, their depth and their squads even more so, which, I mean, depending on how that looks now, the New Zealand sides will be beating them by, over 50 plus all the time if they're going to lose all their players. I think their biggest concern and would be, whether those European clubs are going to release these guys, because their season traditionally finishes around June, July. They're then going to come over here, if we didn't have COVID, play a June international and then sort of roll in right through. They have to be back in Europe before the end of the year. So effectively, what does that look like, for these Wallaby guys that are, coming back into the fold? They're going to be year in, year out. So, have they got a backup plan in terms of, is it we're only going to be picking these guys, a year out or 2 years out from, from the Rugby World Cup, just to make sure that it appeases the clubs in Europe, because the money is extraordinarily a lot more. Will they be competitive? I think they will. I honestly think the way, club rugby is over there now, in terms of, the Premiership and the Championship, I think, the guys are coming back now a lot better nick, and they're adjusting a lot faster than perhaps they used to. Back in my day for sure. So Super Rugby will take a massive hit, but you'd have to say the Wallabies are doing it to make sure that obviously it's a roll-on effect. They start performing, they start winning, it brings in more sponsorship, it grows their game, then they can fund that, put that money towards, funding in terms of recruitment and keeping their players here. So totally understand where they're going with, there in Australia.
Look, JK, we've had a lot of players who are doing just what you've talked about, taking sabbaticals and breaks and heading to Japan. So essentially we're doing something similar already. Michael Hooper's done it for Australia, and look, he was outstanding in the 2 test matches we've seen already this year. He went to Japan, played a lot of his games off the bench. But is there a danger, though, if you are that player who does take that break, that when you come back to New Zealand, we're almost playing you back into form in and around the All Blacks? And is that a concern as well?
Yeah, look, I think, totally. To answer your question directly, yes, it is. We've just seen that with Beauden. I mean, Beauden goes away sort of as number one fullback or number one first five, but definitely starting to coming off the bench. Retallick a little bit different. But I think our challenge is we've got to stop following the market and start leading it. So I believe that we need to bring the Japanese into Super Rugby. We need to bring in the East Coast of America into Super Rugby. We need to bring Pacifica into Super Rugby. And how we do that, whether it's Rugby Aotearoa and then a European type cup. But that way, the LA size just won their competition over there. There will be money going in there. We know there's a lot of money in Japan. So I believe that if they can stay in our basin, you should be allowed to pick them. And then you don't sacrifice Super Rugby for the sake of us losing everyone. Because I believe that Northern Hemisphere rugby is in great shape. The French have doubled their TV rights. The English competition is fantastic. Now, they've taken a little bit of an English football approach to it, or a European soccer. They just want the superstars. And I think Laporte's come in and said, let's not do this, because in the last 4 years he didn't have a number 8 or a number 10 that was a Frenchman. So why are we following the market? We've got to lead the market and try and help these guys. I understand that they need to make as much money as they can, but let's create an amazing Asian base. Let's invest and put a franchise in Beijing or something. Be a bit proactive, and players can go over there, make more money, but also we can pick New Zealanders from that competition, right? If you are playing for the Sunwolves and you come down to New Zealand and Canterbury, and you're competitive with Canterbury or the Blues or whatever, and you can show enough form to get picked, let's do that. Because I think we're continuing to follow where the game has taken us instead of trying to lead it.
In terms of the game, in terms of what surrounds the game, JK, in terms of entertainment, the mascot has always been a big part of sport around the world. And for one Dunedin rugby club, they are a lone survivor.
We're down in the old mighty Green Island Rugby Club, established back in 1884. Mum and Dad enrolled me when I was in the under-7s. I don't think what the year that was, about 1980. Played all my schoolboy rugby here, went off to high school, come back to Green Island as a colt, and finally retired at the age of 45. When you're still recovering on Wednesday, you know it's time to give up because training's Thursday. Saturdays normally around the 7, 8 o'clock start. Prepping the club, making sure that the chairs are done, toilets are done, changing rooms all prepped. I also coach my son's team at Otago Boys. They've got their 150th reunion this weekend. And again, mate, all 5, let's go. The under-15 Blues played Wakatipu out here on number 1. Let's go hard, let's go hard. So it was about making sure these guys are made to feel welcome. As we do in Green Island, we like to be a good host. We win over Wakatipu, 38-28, so we're pretty proud of that. So well done, OB. And then the focus comes back to Green Island. His name's Claus. Got to get the old Grizzly Claus up. To this day, we're still the only club with a mascot running around in Dunedin. It's about building that family atmosphere, the culture we've got out here. And I think we do that very well. We've got the biggest junior club in Otago now, with 347 registrations, I believe. We run 26 kids teams.
All the stars have aligned today. Not only are we celebrating Gareth's contribution to Green Island, we've got Ben Smith turning out for us on our Heritage Day, and it's also Ben's 50th game for the club. Gareth is the ultimate club volunteer. It's probably more of a case of what Gareth doesn't do. It's easy to cover, but he's our club operations guy. He looks after the bar. He does so many things. He's here almost 7 days a week. He does a fantastic job. He's also runs our functions, which is a massive part of the club, other revenue streams for us. He's just the ultimate man.
Just saying before, actually, Gareth is he's a bit of a champion, works behind the scenes to make sure that this club functions the way it does. He's behind the bar, he's chasing around different teams, making sure that they've got what they need. And I think this club is functioning like it is at the moment because people like him are doing hard work and behind the scenes, and it's awesome to see.
Kia ora and welcome back to the Breakdown in Lockdown. We continue our greatest All Black 15 for the 4th week, and let's hear from Grant Nisbet as you voted on the best 9 and 10 of all time.
Thanks, Jeff. Let's have a quick reminder of the pack we've picked. The front row is Ken Gray, Sean Fitzpatrick and Tony Woodcock. At lock, we've got Brodie Retallick and Colin Meads. And last week, we settled on Richie McCaw, Zin Zanbrook and Michael Jones as our loose forwards. So we've moved to the backs, and the expert panel of myself, Ken Laban, Ricky Swanell and Phil Gifford agreed on Aaron Smith at halfback and Dan Carter at first five. And you supported us with your votes, overwhelmingly going for Smith and Carter. So we're all agreed. Aaron Smith is our greatest All Blacks halfback and Dan Carter is the first five.
Here's Aaron slipping. Off goes Aaron Smith. Brilliant.
You give me one part of his game that isn't up there as a great All Black.
When we first picked Aaron, it was, after a lot of discussion, he's not a very big man. But what we loved about him was his speed to get to the ball and then clear it.
Now Aaron Smith goes again. Quick hands. And Carter spun away beautifully. Now Gear. He's got Dag looming. Gear's going to do it himself. Gave it away to Aaron Smith. He's got another one. The little halfback.
His ability to clear the ball quickly, allowed guys like Dan Carter and Manonu, Conrad Smith to have time and space to show what they could do. And I think he kind of revolutionised that just by how quick he could get to the breakdown and get rid of it.
He's got all of the skills and all of the halfback traits. Passes brilliantly, passes quickly, communicates with his forwards well, takes gaps when it's on, knows when to run, when to pass, how to kick, where to kick. I don't think I've ever seen a halfback that is more complete in his game than Aaron Smith is.
If you ask me if he's a great All Black, he is. There's no doubt about that.
The great players have time and make things look easy when they're not. And why does someone look like they have time? It's because they're calm and under pressure that they execute things spot on. They don't miss those opportunities, and that's something he did consistently throughout his career.
Carter puts the gas down. He could look either way here. Dan Carter, he's going to do it himself. Oh, brilliant.
Man, Dan Carter's the man. He's just a lad, a good Kiwi lad, humble, funny, has a good time. And then when you see him switch into game mode or training mode, he was so focused and driven on what he wanted. And then his practices, watching his skill sessions, watching him kick goals, kick drop punts, drop offs. You never looked like he'd shank a kick, or I passed him heaps of balls to kick, and it just was that was exactly where he wanted to put it.
Here's a drop kick. Dan Carter, and nails it.
It always looked like Dan had time on his hands. Never looked like he was rushed or under pressure, and you could see it on his face, you could see it in the way he moved.
I think with the modern day 10 now, as you say, it's not just the ability to put people in space, it's creating space.
Carter's still going. Carter with his pass. Gets the point.
He had all the skills, as a 10, the kicking abilities, those core roles. He was very good defensively, read the game well.
Did it beautifully. It's got the distance. Oh, that is fantastic. Drawing and passing nicely now, Carter. Carter should go all the way here. Dan Carter, what a brilliant try.
And he'd always practice different kicks, right foot, left foot, and he just oozed confidence, but not arrogance.
He was someone that just looked like time stood still for him, and he could move the game the way he wanted to. He was definitely the conductor, he had everyone singing at the speed that he wanted to play it.
Looks on the inside for Jane. Back it goes to Carter. Lovely stuff. Carter, Dan Carter, and stretching scores.
I still pinch myself thinking I got to throw him some passes.
Sky has not done a thing wrong, Daniel Carter.
This week on New Zealand's Greatest 15, we're picking the midfield. Our shortlist for second five is Bill Osborne, Walter Little, Warwick Taylor, Ma'anonu.
I was pretty set that, well, I am pretty set that Ma'anonu is my second five. I think he showed enormous resilience. I think as he grew as a person, he grew as a player. He was always at his best for the All Blacks, and I know that upset Hurricanes fans at various points in his career.
Ken, do you agree?
I do.
That's a start.
Wayne Smith shared a lovely Ma'a Nonu story with me a few years ago when the All Blacks would prepare for their training sessions. He would do a whiteboard session of outline what they were going to do. Then the boys would have an understanding of exactly what it was, and then they would go out and do it. Smithy was telling me there was this period in the All Blacks where he didn't feel that Ma'a was engaging in any way with the process. He would sit there looking out the window, not really concentrating, and every time I'd ask him a question, he would just, whatever, bro, sweet. So anyway, Smithy was telling me, he said, I put a lot of time into these sessions, and I was starting to get a little bit conscious that my work, my integrity was being disrespected by Ma'a. So I said, one of the meetings, I said to him, Ma'a, why don't you come to the front and tell us what you think we should do after I had already explained? So Ma'a comes from the back of the room, the whiteboard, gets the duster, rubs off this, and this, adds this, and he said, mate, he'd improved the skills we were going to do that day by 100%. And he said he'd always felt that way, but out of respect for me, he never said anything. He just looked out and whatever I was asking, he outlined the reasons why. And he said the other thing I noticed was that when Ma'a spoke, everybody in the room listened. And he said, so everything that you read about him statistically, the least tackled second five of all time, the hardest player to mark all time, the most dominant player in that position. So, yeah, 100% Ma'a Nonu, number 12.
Righto. I've got a week's soft spot, I should say, for Walt Little. Not only because he's an incredible character, intensely likeable, but as Buck Shelford said of him, I don't know what, and I'm quoting Buck's words exactly, I don't know what the little bugger does, but somehow he's very, very hard to tackle, But having said that, I agree entirely. The panel's has one on this, I think. Ma'a Nonu, the one thing I'd say about Ma'a Nonu is I cannot seriously, and we got these lists with a bit of time to prepare for it, I can't think of a single All Black whose career path to me, has got better and better and better and better. By the time he hit the 2015 Rugby World Cup, to me, he patently was an all-time great, whatever team he was playing for, the best All Black second five I've ever seen, and it's very hard for me to picture. Somebody may come along that's as good as him. It's hard for me to picture somebody being better than him.
It's a good point that you make, though, Phil, in that since Ma'a Nonu has no longer been an All Black, we haven't found that natural successor. There's been some very good players, and there are some going around at the moment. Good, Huey Leonard, Brown, Crotty, Williams,
sure.
But nobody has cemented that spot quite like Ma'a Nonu did.
Believe it or not, we have unanimity. In our number 12 jersey, we're agreed. The contender for greatest All Black at second five, Ma'a Nonu.
Franks heaves it out into midfield. Just need to keep shifting it. Nonu! Ma'a Nonu's in.
Our greatest 15 shortlist for centre, Bruce Robertson, Joe Stanley, Tana Umaga and Conrad Smith. This is one of the toughest positions, I reckon, to sort out.
I totally agree. I mean, there's some fabulous names in that lineup. I mean, I wrote a book, and so this is very difficult. Very dear friends with Joe Stanley. And I think Joe, All Black at 29, and went on to have, I think, a stellar All Black career and a key man in the backline of the 1987 World Cup winning team. But I've got to say, in 1972, the Auckland Star sent me out to cover a game at Counties. I can't remember who they were playing against. And there was this kid with the skinniest legs I've ever seen on a rugby player playing in the 13 jersey for Counties called Bruce Robertson. And I just sat on the press bench almost with my jaw gaping. That's how brilliant this kid was. And the county selector, Barry Bracewell, he's a kid from Hastings, and he was a teacher's college, Bruce Robertson, at the time. And Barry Bracewell, the county selector, had seen him playing fullback for the Ardmore team, plucked him out of the side, put him into the county's team. 1972, by the end of that... No, 1971. The next year, Bruce Robertson was an All Black, still only about 20 or 21, and went on to greatness. I've never seen a centre and Joe Stanley would be close to it. Bunsey had other skills, but possibly not this one quite as much. Conrad Smith had these skills. But Bruce Robertson, putting a wing into space was just a thing of absolute beauty. And he was also a damn good defender for a guy that was never a big, husky guy. And he also was so stunningly quick that if the wing wasn't in position and Bruce Robertson decided to run, there's a damn good chance he'd score the try himself.
Ricky, I guess you're going to be a little more modern.
I'm going to say Tana Umanga, just a beloved figure in New Zealand rugby, and for someone of my generation, the first Pacific Island captain. Yeah, Tana Umanga.
The man from Wainui is nodding.
Well, I'm nodding out of respect.
Respect for me or respect for Tana?
Respect for Ricky, my mate. And whaalonga Tana Umanga. And I agree with everything that Ricky said about Tana, but my selection is Bruce Robertson as well. I remember him in the 70s. A player way ahead of his time, Phil, wasn't he? Tall,
yes, he was.
Unbelievably skillful, his timing, his angled runs, his ability to cut. We talk about coaching all the time about going in and then out. He'd run those lovely short balls off Bill Osborne, get him behind, draw and pass on the fullback, put the wing away, almost like clockwork. And he was a beautiful player to watch. He was an elegant runner with the ball, a tremendous defender, as Phil has alluded to. Bruce Robertson would have played 120 tests in the modern era, wouldn't he?
Yes.
He was that good.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We again have unanimity.
We do.
Well,
Ricky,
kind of. No. I'm still sticking with. As much as, and it's purely because I never got to see Bruce Robertson play as well. But I totally defer to your opinion. But Tana, he's still my guy.
Okay, 3-1 majority then. Our greatest contender for All Blacks at centre is Bruce Robertson.
Right, team, we've made it. It's our first one back in lockdown. Mills, JK, it's amazing what can happen in another week. I'm fascinated to see how the next 7 days plays out and the sort of things we could be talking about next week.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait, Goldie. I'm really looking forward to hopefully our boys getting on the plane and that South African game. There's lots to look forward to, and I think that's really, really important when people are in lockdown as well. Have things to look forward to, do things on a daily basis. Don't worry about what you can't control. And so we'll see you all next week.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm like you. I know, although there's no rugby on, or hardly any of it, and lots been talked about off the field and the political stuff. I just hope there's some decisions made, and the All Blacks are heading over, and we can get this championship going. And if there's not, I'm hopeful also that they can all sit down and nut something else. So we're not sort of talking about all this controversial stuff. But looking forward to another week. I'm glad you said that, JK. Don't control what you can't control, because I certainly can't control my 2- and 3-year-old at the moment. They're driving me nuts.
And I've got homeschooling to do. So we're all under serious pressure in this household. I tell you what, though, I know as a country we'll continue to do what we can to protect ourselves. We'll do it right and support each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you in 7 days' time. Mā te wā.